What's up, guys? Well, I'm back. I know it's been a couple weeks, probably about 2 weeks since I have made anything or have even posted a short of anything like that. It's just been crazy with youth camp, along with just trying to get the whole church kind of back together afterwards. So I was going to vlog during youth camp, but then it ended up being a lot busier than I thought it was going to be and just took way too much time. I would start a video and I'd start to be like, okay, we got the groove of it, then it just fall through. Anyways, enough about that. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So glad to have you. We talk everything worship guitar and pedals and all that kind of stuff. Also, make sure to check the playlist called the Hymn Locker. I got a third installment coming soon, and so just stay tuned for that. So to make sure you're staying tuned to it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification. So anytime I post or make a post, you can check it out. Make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, share it with your worship community, your guitar players, your bass players. I will say this, we got some exciting stuff coming up. I got a buddy of mine who I'm going to be bringing in. Once I can figure out how to do Zoom stuff, we're going to bring him on and we're just going to talk just some pedals, some amps, and stuff like that. I also got for all the bass players out there, I got some stuff coming up for that as well. All right, so let's get into the topic for today. As you can read down at the bottom, this is all have to do with reverbs. I had a question pop up on one of my last videos on how I'm running my reverbs and kind of what's my approach to them. So let's look at that today. All right, so let's start with our first one, and I'm going to kind of go down the line of how I run my Big Sky. Of course, I have presets for certain songs because some songs, such as Egypt, for instance, by Bethel and Corey Asbury, that one takes 3 different reverbs, takes 2 different delays. We're not going to get into that. We're just going to talk about how I would basically run it if I was just thrown into a setting and given a list of songs saying, here you go. Now, that's basically how I like to do things because we run a lot of stuff spontaneous here at our church. Now, I have about 3 to 4 reverb patches that are my go-tos, and so let's look at those. And the first one on my board, on my Big Sky, I have it labeled as a small setting. It is a plate reverb. I will just go ahead and say this off the top. All of my reverbs, for instance, when it comes to the tone of them, they're all darker reverbs. I don't like really high squealy sounding reverbs because they can get way too piercing. I also don't like ones that are kind of matching your tone because then it really gets lost. So I like to go for a darker reverb because it kind of sits under the guitar tone that you are currently playing. So starting with this first one, I have sound examples to go along with all of these as well that I recorded the other day. So let's talk about them. This first small one is probably only set to not even 2 seconds of a decay. Now, I like to use this really for rhythm stuff. If I'm hitting some big chords with a lot of overdrive, I try to stay away from just using this as more so as swells and stuff. I know a lot of people try to use a lot of delay with their swells, but we're in the worship community, and when you're using you're doing swells, you want that big reverb. So not this one. Don't use this for that. So this small reverb here is the sound example for that. Alright, so as you could tell with that small reverb, that small plate reverb, it doesn't get in the way of anything, and you can really use these small reverbs for big moments if you're wanting to jump into a lead line, or if you are like my church where guitar solos do happen, you can use this one as well. Especially if you have something that is very much of a more riffy type thing. I'll just continue to use Egypt for example. I would use this on that bridge, and it would make sure that the notes are heard but still give you a little bit of space. That way you don't feel completely empty. All right, so the next one we're going to jump over to where I have I call it my medium one. Um, I'm not very wordsy when it comes to how I've named my reverbs and my big sky. It's literally small, medium, big. And of course I have the big one sitting on B because, well, I guess you can say I have a slight form of OCD. Anyways, so the next one we're going to look at is what I have in my C bank, and that is my medium. So I will change this one depending on how I'm just feeling. Either sometimes it'll stay that way for a month, sometimes 3 months, sometimes I'll change it in a week. So I'll either use a bloom or I will use a plate. In this sound example, I'm using a plate. Of course, still a little bit darker. The decay now is probably reaching to about 2.5 seconds, maybe to 3. I will explain this, that I don't use a lot of pre-delay. Now, one thing that you'll really see, especially with like these shorter delays or these shorter reverbs, is that pre-delay is really going to affect how it falls over the next thing that you're playing. And if you're playing something more that's like a lead line or a heavy rhythm part, that's really going to almost give you this weird like rumbly sound, and it almost sounds like a distorted like almost like if you're plugging in a cable, that kind of noise. So we want to stay away from that. We want to make sure that we don't have that going on. So if you do have that, check your pre-delay, make sure that it's turned down a little bit. I do use it, but ever so slightly. Also, making sure that the mix is on the mix, or the overall on your reverbs is not overpowering the rest. All right, so now let's take a look at how I'm using my medium. All right, so as you can tell, the medium reverb is starting to add a little space and a little bit of texture, and you're starting to really be able to get that ambience that you want. Now, I'll still use this kind of stuff for lead lines, but you can also use it for swells, but don't really use that for like beginning of songs and stuff like that unless the riff is the beginning of the song. So this is more so kind of like my go-to reverb. It's not too much, it's not too little. And in the context of a mix, one thing I will say is that whenever you start playing in a room and there's other bandmates, there's cymbals, there's crowd noise, there's microphones, a lot of times the reverb might seem a little big in your ears and might seem like a lot. And you may think that's exactly what you want. But remember, whenever you get into a big room or a sanctuary or with other microphones, you will run into where that is also giving you reverb too. So a lot of times I'm using these bigger reverbs even just for my ears to help me feel more comfortable. Now I will turn the mix down and the decay down a little bit to make sure in my comfortability I'm not killing the sound man to where he can't find my guitar because I'm making it so cloudy and I'm making it so hard to find me in the mix. All right, so this last setting is going to be my big reverb and my big sound and my big, let's just be honest, I'm using the Big Sky, so I'm using the cloud for this. The cloud setting is a beautiful setting, and it's a beautiful preset that Strymon has even advanced on, and now they have the cloud burst, which a lot of people have gone to just to make sure they can have that for swells. It almost reminds me of the RV5 when they had the modulation setting on that. But I can say that just from my point of view, it has absolutely killed guitar tone and guitar players that think they want ambience and they think they want to have space, so they have locked into this cloud setting and cranking it up because they think ambience is key and think ambience is what the people want and it's what the sound guys want and it's what the worship pastor wants. And they find themselves super frustrated because they can't either A, hear themselves, there's just way too much going on, and they feel like their tone is just terrible. And necessarily it's not terrible tone. You could probably turn this reverb off and have amazing tone, but they're just cranking the mess out, the mix and the decay in this, and all in the name of ambience. So I only use my big cloud stuff at this much decay and this much of a mix for swells. So let's take a look at that sound example now. So you can get some crazy tones and some big reverbs in this, and it can make it sound so beautiful, make it sound perfect almost. In well, in my opinion. Now, using this sparingly as worship guitar players, I'll say it again, we try to find that ambience, but make sure you're not using this in a way to where it's going to absolutely destroy your tone, because the more that you try these things that are absolute tone killers, let's just be real, these are tone killers. If you're doing more of these, all you're doing is hurting your own confidence, and you're hurting the the relationship between you and your sound man, because you think it's your sound man's fault. Your sound man is so confused because he can't find you in the first place, and it's all just because your reverbs are too high. So do yourself a favor, make sure you're locking that one in. Okay, so this next one is just a little fun one I added to my board. At Tone Factor with David Hislop, go check them out. I use a lot of their amps for my HX Stomp and the presets and stuff like that. Now, go check them out because I found that one of their presets had a reverb on it that was pretty cool on the glitz, and I actually will use this as a go-to if I need ambience right then and there. A lot of times our worship pastor who leads from the keyboard will come off of the keyboard sometimes and exhorting and stuff like that, and so a lot of times I do need that on board, and I need that ambience right then and there. If I'm on a preset somewhere that does not have a reverb that will do that, I don't need to scroll through my timeline just to get to my big channel. And so I have this one always on tap, ready to go on my HX Stomp. That way I can always be sure, okay, I have an ambient reverb ready to go. So this is the sound clip of that one. Sounds great again. Not saying that in a super arrogant way. I just love the way a guitar can sound with a lot of ambience. Notice what I said there. I can love how a guitar can sound with a lot of ambience. Just the guitar sounds great. Now, if you use that same reverb and you try to use that in a lead setting to play a lead line or a lead riff, no, no, no. And you may be thinking, I am talking so much on this, and you may be thinking, like, Michael, why are you just it's like you're beating a dead horse, man. Like, this is so much. You keep talking about it because it's so important, and I keep seeing it happen. And I keep seeing people on forums and people on Facebook groups and people on Instagram groups just talking about how they're so mad because either their guitar isn't heard or their sound guy just does not like reverb and all this other stuff. And I'm telling you, if you can figure these reverbs out and you can just understand probably to use a darker reverb, don't use so much mix into it to where it's falling on your what you are playing. Use a little bit of pre-delay so that way it is having some separation from your guitar tone, but not too much pre-delay that it's falling into the next thing that you're playing. Also, make sure to use the bigger ones for swells and just those first verse type pickings, and leave them when you get to your lead stuff. Leave them. Be comfortable in your playing and stop using reverbs as a cover up for your playing. So that's how I'm basically running my reverbs. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure to hit that bell notification. We got some more videos coming up soon. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I am so excited to see all the questions that may come in from this video. If you have any more questions or you got any other videos that you'd like me to post or talk about, just put it down in the comments and I'll make sure to check it out. That's where this video came from. So, alright, I'll see y'all later.